Welcome in to another edition of Gold and Black Radio. I'm your host, Derek Schultz. Purdue comes home from the Pacific time zone with two key road wins, sweeping their Big Ten counterparts. I guess I should say their new Big Ten counterparts in Washington and Oregon, but they have a quick turnaround with the first Tuesday night Big Ten game of the season coming up here against Ohio State. We're going to talk about it all with Brian Neubert in just a few minutes. But first, a thank you to the sponsors who make Gold and Black Radio possible, including our friends at the Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics and the official credit card for Purdue fans. Boiler Up. East End Grill and Ripple & Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. The Whitaker Inn, this Midwestern oasis is perfect for a relaxing staycation or a weekend getaway. Escape from the ordinary at the Whitaker Inn. Sand Valley Resort, the Friends of James Beard Chef Invitational at Sand Valley offers a weekend of culinary delights as 8 Midwest chefs showcase their skills, enjoy exceptional food, friendly competition, and fundraising in a unique, unforgettable setting. As winter melts away, well, hoping it melts away a little bit sooner here in Indianapolis. Join us in 2025 for an unforgettable culinary journey with opportunities to taste and learn. Visit sandvalleypursuits.com/events/chef invitational to sign up. And finally, the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research, which has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Purdue brings together world-class Boilermaker scientists from across the university, conducting cutting-edge research that uncovers new ways to prevent, diagnose, and treat cancer. With your support, cancer research saves lives. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. GoldenBlack.com columnist and overall basketball knower Brian Neubert now joins the show.
Cover that's right. Yes. The word we decided on.
Yes, that's right. Not ball no. I'll get that in post. I'll go ahead and edit this file before I send it over to Alan and make sure that you have the proper title there. Before we talk hoops, I think, and it's obviously always more fun when you win and the fans are happy and the coverers of the team are happy as well. But how was the first ever Big Ten West Coast trip through Seattle and Eugene? I know you were just out there in, what was it, Portland for that Phil Knight thing that Purdue played in a couple of years ago. But to have a league now road trip out there, what was the experience like for you?
Yeah, well, you said show up at 2:30 for the show. I was here at 11:30. I don't know where you were. It was a little bit disorienting, but I mean, it kind of comes with the territory when you have to travel across the country. But it is weird. It is weird going right from one road game to another road game. It is weird seeing different basketball culture, and it reminds you how abnormal a fit this is with the Big Ten, because these are great athletic towns, Seattle and Eugene, great athletic programs at both of those schools, but they are not basketball cities. They are not basketball cultures. And one of the things that has defined Big Ten basketball for generations has been how basketball crazy these relatively little Midwestern freezing cold cities are, where, let's be honest, there's not a whole lot else to do in January than warm each other up by packing a college basketball arena. And it's just a different deal out west. It's a different deal at Oregon, which has had good teams, which has had great players, which has committed to athletics to the nth degree. And certainly at Washington, it's just not the same thing as even Lincoln. Basketball is really important there. Those people turn out at Nebraska, even though Nebraska has no history. The thing about Rutgers and Maryland, at least, yes, they are a cultural outlier. They are a geographic outlier. But those are naturally angst-ridden people out east, as you can attest. They want to get in there and they want to be crazy and they want to boo people and they want to get into it and enjoy some fellowship with their fellow angst-ridden Easterners. It's just different out west, and it's just kind of a bizarro world thing in terms of the fit in the Big Ten for both Washington and Oregon.
Yeah, the only thing that I could really kind of equate it to, and Northwestern hasn't been this way in a while, but, 10, 15, 20 years ago when Northwestern was still kind of in the gutter, you'd have Purdue or IU or some of the Big Ten teams go there and their fans would take over Welsh Ryan.
Yes.
And, you're just not used to watching a road Big Ten game and having your fans as the visiting team be louder than the other fans. I get that it was a 12 o'clock start in Eugene, but to see the empty seats as well, Brian, I mean, it was a top 20 matchup. And you could see like noticeable pockets of empty seats at tip time.
Yes, that's actually not uncommon for Purdue people. when Purdue goes to coasts, when they go national, when they go to major cities, versus when they go to, say, Indianapolis or even Chicago, where Purdue has a ton of alums, Purdue has a ton of fans. But I think your average, very successful Purdue alumnus is more likely to graduate in engineering, in something science related, in something aviation related, something that is more likely to take them to a coast than to stay local. Whereas Indiana, I think if you go to law school, if you go to med school, if you go to become a teacher, you're more likely to start your career here. So more of their natural fan base stays local. So when Purdue and Indiana play in Gainbridge Fieldhouse, what used to be Conseco Fieldhouse, which was then Bankers Life Fieldhouse, whatever they call it nowadays, the IU people really turn out. Whereas when Purdue plays in Indy, it's not quite the same. But when Purdue goes to California, or when Purdue goes to Maui, which is close to California, or when Purdue goes to any of these MTEs in November, San Diego is a great example. And certainly when Purdue goes to the Pacific Northwest, where I don't know how many alums probably work for Microsoft or Boeing or something like that. When they go to LA next year, there will be a ton of Purdue people there. When Purdue first started going to Rutgers, they take that place over because of all the Purdue people in the city, in New Jersey, and so on and so forth. And it's something that's almost become kind of routine. It is still kind of a shock to the system when you see a visiting fan base take over an arena like they used to at Northwestern. It's not quite the same, but still very similar. Rutgers, it's still very similar. It's not quite the domination it was when Rutgers was atrocious. But it's really part of the deal now. And I think this will probably keep up every time Purdue goes out there until Washington fans and Oregon fans say, we're not going to allow this to happen. And they just buy all the tickets. Whether or not they're basketball crazy enough to actually do that, that kind of remains to be seen. But that's what I got to. That's what I mentioned in my original point is these are not basketball crazy cities. Purdue is a basketball crazy and national fan base. Not a national fan base the way Kentucky or Duke is. They don't have Subway alums all over the country, but their alums are all over the country, and they will turn out when they don't get to come back and see Purdue play on campus very often.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just something that I think these Pac-12 teams, former Pac-12 teams, are going to learn. As fantastic as these athletic departments are, and the money that they've got, and the athletes, and all of that. I mean, it's a whole different ball of wax playing in Champaign, Iowa City, and Madison
Yes.
compared to even LA. LA, it's just UCLA's got all this history, but you go to a UCLA game, it's not like a Mackey Arena type atmosphere. It's just not. That's not how they operate. As you said, just culturally, it's a lot different. Let's talk about the games themselves. Purdue actually trailed both games at halftime and then obviously came back to win both. And you've written about this trend where Purdue seemingly plays well in the first half, right? Like you'll watch the first half and you'll say they're not playing poorly, but they either can't get shots to fall or maybe, some uncharacteristic stuff on the other end happens. Their opponent shoots better than they usually do, something like that. And then it just turns out in the second half, they just turn it on. And we kind of saw them certainly follow this script in Washington, and they had a great second half against Oregon too. Once things finally got out of the mud. I mean, that game was very much a rock fight for about the first 30 minutes before Purdue eventually started to pull away. Is this just a second half team, or what, Brian, do you attribute this to, this fact that, first half slow, second half guns a-blazing?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain because Purdue is getting what it wants offensively. It's starting games off by getting the ball inside. Trey Kaufman-Moren's getting a lot of high percentage looks that, for whatever reason, aren't going in. Obviously, he's ending the game well. He's ending the game with his numbers, but Minnesota was that way. Washington was that way. Oregon was that way. And Purdue's not shooting very well from three. And it does turn around in the second half. The three-point shooting didn't turn around at Oregon in the second half. But the difference with this Purdue team is the pressure has been offloaded for them to score a ton of points, for them to make a ton of shots because they're defending so well. They're forcing turnovers, they're rebounding really well, and they're just winning a lot of different ways. So Purdue can have a rough shooting half at Washington, but still only give up 30 points and still only be down 8 at the half, when normally Purdue would need to, have a pretty big point total on the board to be up in a game like that. Historically, because of the way those teams function, the way those teams operated, and the way they were built, where their strengths lied. But this has been one of the most stark in-season transformations I think I've seen at Purdue. They have not just gone from being good enough defensively last season. They have gone to being, taking just the last 7 games as our sample here. They've been dominant defensively. I mean, since Auburn, they haven't given up 70 points. And their turnover generation numbers are through the roof. This is not a program that's been built on generating turnovers anymore. It's not really college basketball anymore. But Purdue is playing so well as a team, and they have adhered so well to their structure. I think the coaching staff has made some effective moves in the offseason and probably in season, and Purdue's gotten better within the framework of that. Caleb First has really changed them, has really made them better in a lot of different ways that I'll actually outline in a story I'm writing for tomorrow about Purdue's defensive emergence here. Braden Smith has really made an impact. The 2 freshman guards have really helped them. Miles Colvin thrown into that mix as well. And Purdue's playing the best defense, the best sustained defense I think they've played in years. And that's the reason why they can go 1 of 8 from 3 in the first half or whatever it was, and, still be in position to take those games over. Purdue was down in those 2 games at half, and I still didn't think they were losing either of those games. Washington, maybe I thought maybe it wasn't Purdue's night. They were going to have one of those games, but Purdue obviously proved me wrong very quickly.
You mentioned some of the in-season changes. After the Marquette loss, we saw the lineup change with Colby and Heidi coming in, and that worked for a bit, including the tournament went out in San Diego, where they were both really crucial in those wins. And then after that holiday stretch with the losses to A&M and Auburn, he does it again before they re-enter Big Ten play with Cox in first, which is now, he's ridden into a 7-1 Big Ten start with 6 straight wins. As much as, this team has, I think, grown and gotten better somewhat naturally, and maybe no one could have seen this sort of transformation coming, including Matt Painter himself. It feels like he's always put them in the best position to succeed, right? When it comes to, I think sometimes coaches get maybe a little overly stubborn and, well, this is going to work and let's just wait it out and it's going to happen. And I think he seems to be more apt to, if he sees something wrong, he's not afraid to make the change, even knowing that change might not fix things.
Yeah, I think part of it has been rewarding Caleb First for how well he's played. This has been the best sustained stretch of basketball Caleb First's career in what is really his first big opportunity and his last opportunity at the same time. Can't say enough about how he has transformed Purdue, and from a defensive perspective, he's chipping in offensively. He looks more confident than he's ever been. He's playing his ass off, if I can say that on the air. Try to stop me.
PG-13 on this show, so you're good.
Not safe for work. I think the CJ Cox thing he's kind of the face of a 3-man rotation there. You mentioned if Painter sees something that's working or not working, he'll deviate from it. I think CJ Cox is starting, but there will be games Miles Colvin plays more. There will be games Jakari Harris plays more than any of them. I think that's kind of a 3-headed starter there, but Caleb First is kind of the guy. Purdue is playing 2 bigs, but Caleb First doesn't always play like a big. I mean, he can move his feet as well as any big guy in the country. Defensively, he's on top of things. He's their most important help defender. He's their most versatile defender, and really, he makes this all possible. What Purdue has done defensively these past 6-7 games, I don't think it's possible without Caleb First.
And you look at, the Oregon game and the bench contributions as well. You had talked about how well you thought Camden Heide played in that game, but I think overall they got a little bit of something out of everybody. I mean, outside of, I think, one bad shot, I thought Raleigh Burgess gave them 7, 8, 9, however many minutes it ended up being. And, Jakari Harris pitched in at the free throw line with a couple of buckets, and Miles Colvin is able to contribute without scoring, which is something that I think you wouldn't have said about him when as a younger player. So it feels like we're starting to maybe start to see that come. We talked about it last week, Brian, like Purdue finding the best version of itself. We said that before last week, and then you see the 2 games last week, and I think it just kind of underlines that point.
Yeah, coaches don't always like to articulate roles publicly, or probably period, because they don't want to put a limit on what they think players are capable of, or they don't want players to read it and say, oh, coach doesn't think I can score. I have no problem articulating roles as I see it. And not that I'm an authority, but Cam Heide is, I've said from day one, offensive rebounding, defense, versatility, make an open 3 every now and then, run in transition. You do that stuff, you're good. Miles Colvin, you'd love to be making shots. Obviously, he's going to get a lot of them because they've got guys who attract a lot of attention on that team. But if the shots aren't falling, keep guarding, keep rebounding. His rebounding effort really stood out at Oregon. I was shocked after the game to find out that he only had 2 in the game, because I remember both of them. They happened right in front of me. And sometimes your immediate recall triples everything you see. So you think that Miles Colvin had way more rebounds than he had. But the emphasis from him on rebounding has been clear, as it has been for Camden Heide. That and one on the offensive glass he had early when Oregon went zone was a big-time play that easily gets lost in the big picture story of the game. The little minutia stuff like that is stuff we shouldn't overlook, but sometimes the story's too big and there's too many other guys who do big things that sometimes that stuff gets lost. But those guys are impacting games without scoring, and they're much more substantive, versatile, well-rounded players than they were a year ago. And that's exactly what you need when you have 3 high-end players like Purdue does, and Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Wren, and Fletcher Lawyer. For the time being, it is about making those guys better. And I think Miles Colvin and Camden Heide have found pretty nice lanes here. CJ Cox, Jakari Harris as well, certainly. Caleb First, obviously, heading the list. First on the list, if you will. Those guys have played a really important complementary role to their team stars.
No, absolutely. And we're seeing it just kind of all come together for just about everybody. Ohio State's the next opponent, and not just saying this to diminish the opponents this week. I think Ohio State's better than their record says. Michigan is obviously a league contender. And then, the Indiana game, even for some of their struggles, the Indiana game is still the Indiana game. So it's not like this is an easy 3-game homestand here. But how advantageous of a position has Purdue put itself in now? It's 7-1. You're in the middle of the Big Ten season, and you basically get to be at home for 2 weeks. And the furthest that you have to go now, I think, is Iowa City, and that's basically, a month from now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's I don't want to say you've gotten through the hard part of the schedule, because you still have to go to Michigan State. You still have to play the other contenders. You have Michigan twice. You have to go to Bloomington. You have to go to Illinois. The hardest games are ahead, but the hardest stretch might be over, because you've played a ton of road games already. Now, there's only going to be 10 and 10 of each, so it's all going to balance out in the end for everybody. But Purdue having, 6 road games out of the way now? 5.
5, yeah. Penn State, Minnesota, Rutgers, and then the 2.
And being 4-1 in those games, this is clearly a year where the team that wins, it's always the case in the Big Ten, but you win the league on the road. Mm-hmm. And I think Purdue having those 4 road wins already, albeit not against any real contenders yet. I don't think Oregon's a contender. But just having that number of road wins out of the way, as much as the actual travel, puts Purdue in a really advantageous position. That, and the fact that Purdue's getting better. I thought the Big Ten schedule laid out for them favorably, that you weren't diving right into East Lansing or diving right into Champaign. You had an opportunity here to build some momentum and get better and lick your wounds if there were any wounds to be licked after the SEC part of the schedule that obviously, Purdue struggled at times with against very certain opponents, very good opponents, no less. I think Purdue had a chance to build on some success here, and they've done everything you wanted them to do after Auburn. And I think they're rolling right now and getting better.
Should be a fun one this week. Purdue and the Buckeyes tonight, followed by a Friday night tilt against the Fightin' Dusty Mays at Mackey. You can catch Brian's coverage, wrap, video analysis, everything right here at goldenblack.com, and we'll recap it all with him coming up next Tuesday. Brian, you get to sleep in your own bed, I guess, for 2 weeks. So congratulations there.
I'd be asleep right now if it wasn't for you.
I'm sorry.
Making me get up and do this show.
Alan was like, hey, you got to tape with Brian today. And then I texted you, and then he immediately texted me. He said, he's probably exhausted. And I'm like, well, Alan, you probably should have told me that beforehand.
There were basketball interviews today, so that's what got me up. So another quick turnaround. But think about what this is like on the players. I mean, you haven't had a day off in I don't know how long. It's constant one-day prep in addition to the travel. The travel is one thing, but the mental sharpness is another. And the preparation is obviously a big deal. And, Purdue's had a lot of one-day turnarounds here, and that's tournament mode. And, you don't necessarily need to be in tournament mode in January. The Big Ten has too many games squeezed into too short of a calendar. There are too many teams in the Big Ten. They're too far apart, and you're never going to hear me stop complaining about this. And people are going to get tired of it. But too bad. I've got the mic.
It's unique and it's cool, and the novelty of it. I'll admit I have enjoyed, but logistically speaking, it is a nightmare, and it's going to remain a nightmare because there's nothing that you can do to smooth out a midseason trip to Seattle and Eugene from West Lafayette, Indiana. There's nothing you can do about that. So it is what it is, right? As they say. Brian, we'll talk again next week. Get some rest, bud.
Yep. Thanks, Derek.
That's our pal Brian Neubert, goldenblack.com columnist. And that is our show for today. I want to give a final thank you to all of our great sponsors, including the Purdue Federal Credit Union, the official credit card for Purdue fans, East End Grill and Rippling Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street in Lafayette, the Whitaker Inn for unparalleled comfort and cuisine. Visit the Whitaker Inn. Sand Valley Resort. Join us for the Friends of James Beard Invitational at Sand Valley, an unforgettable culinary journey with opportunities to taste and learn. Visit sandvalleypursuits.com/events/chef invitational to sign up. And the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research. The Purdue Institute for Cancer Research has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. And don't forget to sign up to become a member right here for the best Purdue coverage at goldenblack.com if you haven't already. Knucklehead Central, Brian, obviously Tom's analysis when it comes to football and all the portal happenings and signing day right around the corner. Alan and his historical knowledge, which is crazy, that whole archive brain of his. He's basically the unofficial Purdue sports historian. You get Carm, you get me, you get all these shows, you get everything at goldenblack.com. If you're a Purdue fan, that's where you've got to subscribe, and that's where you have to be. So go ahead and do so today. Goldandblack.com if you haven't already. Until next Tuesday, I'm Derek Schultz. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time right here on Gold and Black Radio.